I wasn't even supposed to be there that night. The charity event was one of those things Sandra always enjoyed more than I did: slick invitation cards, curated wine lists, a guest list that read like a LinkedIn brag sheet. I had half a mind to bail, to text her something polite like, running late, might skip. Tell the Johnsons hi. But something, call it instinct, maybe, pulled me there. Like some part of me already knew I needed to see what was coming. It was a Friday evening, cool for late spring, and the sky had already turned that dark watercolor blue when I arrived. The event was held in a renovated distillery, the kind with exposed brick walls, iron chandeliers, and string lights that turned the whole place into something between a wedding venue and a photo shoot. The air smelled like aged oak and old whiskey mixed with too much perfume and catered finger food. I was late, my final meeting of the day ran long, and I hadn't even changed out of my office shoes. I still remember the sound my footsteps made as I crossed the gravel lot and entered the building, sharp, echoing clicks that felt louder than they should have. I ducked under a wide archway that led into the main hall, my eyes still adjusting from the outside light when I saw her. Sandra. She was standing near a quiet corner of the venue, just beyond a low-hanging Edison bulb and partially framed by a heavy velvet curtain meant to separate the bar from the main floor. It was a spot designed for cozy conversation. Private enough for whispers, but still technically in public view. She probably thought she wasn't being watched. But I saw everything. She was leaning in close to a man I didn't recognize. Tall, maybe a little younger than me, dressed in a dark blue blazer with the kind of fit that comes from spending way too much on tailoring. His back was to me, but I could see the way Sandra's body pressed into his, the way her left hand rested on his chest, casual but an asterisk mate, while his arm wrapped low around her waist. Too low. No space between them. She was smiling, not the bright, toothy kind she used for socializing, but the soft one she used to give me in bed right before she kissed me. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't professional. It was familiar. I froze. I couldn't move, couldn't blink. My brain felt like it had fallen down an elevator shaft. For a few seconds I convinced myself I must be seeing it wrong, maybe it was a coworker and they were mid-laugh, mid-hug, something harmless. But then he leaned in, whispered something into her ear, and I watched her close her eyes for half a second like the words did something to her. She tilted her chin up just slightly toward him. I've never hated the way someone moved so much in my life. Then something in her posture shifted. Maybe she saw someone else approaching, or maybe it was just guilt bubbling up for half a second, but she pulled away. Her hand dropped. She stepped back, readjusted her dress, and gave him a light laugh as if nothing had happened. When she turned around, she spotted me. "Oh. Hey," she called out, smiling like nothing was off at all. "You made it." "The guy? Already gone." He turned and slipped into the crowd so fast it was like he'd trained for it. I got a flash of his jawline, nothing more. Sharp, clean-shaven. His gait was confident. A practiced exit. I walked up to her slowly, still unsure what my face was doing. I tried to smooth it into something neutral, but inside I was spiraling. She leaned in and kissed me on the cheek like she always did at these things, more out of routine than affection. "Sorry, I got here early. Thought you weren't coming." "Meeting ran long," I said flatly. "Yeah, I figured," she said. Her eyes scanned the room for something or someone before settling back on me. "Did you eat?" "No." "Let's go find the food table then. I heard they brought in that chef from Hartwell Street you like." I followed her. She moved through the crowd like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just been wrapped in another man's arms 10 seconds earlier. She introduced me to people I barely remembered. Told little jokes. Brushed her hair behind her ear. Laughed easily. All the while, I couldn't stop replaying the image of that embrace in my mind. The warmth in her eyes when she looked at him. The way her posture had relaxed around him. She hadn't looked like that with me in, I don't know, months? I didn't ask her who he was. I didn't trust myself to speak. We made it through the event without incident. I smiled when required, nodded along with conversations I didn't register, sipped sparkling water because I didn't trust my hand to hold a wine glass without shaking. She was radiant all night. Charming, witty. The woman I'd fallen in love with. The woman I thought I still knew. We left around 10:30. The car ride home was quiet, save for the occasional hum of tires against the road. I didn't say anything. Neither did she. The air between us felt like glass. Thin and brittle and moments away from shattering. Once we got home, she kicked off her heels by the door and said something about taking off her makeup. She padded down the hall in that familiar way, humming under her breath, and I just stood there in the entryway staring at the spot where she always dropped her keys. I heard the bathroom door close. The soft click of the lock. A few minutes later, I heard the sink run. I walked past the hallway slowly, Quietly, through the sliver of space under the door, I could see her shadow. She wasn't washing her face. She was on her phone. I stopped and waited. A second later, I heard the click of the delete button. Once, twice, then a pause, then again. I felt something cold and bitter settle in my chest. She emerged a few minutes later in her robe, hair tied back, skin fresh and dewy. She looked at me like nothing was wrong. "You're quiet tonight," she said, yawning as she walked past me. "Just tired," I muttered. She nodded. "Long week." I gave her a tight smile, but I was already somewhere else entirely. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while she slept soundly next to me. Her back was turned, her breathing steady, like nothing was broken, like everything was still normal. But I knew better now. Something had cracked open. And the worst part? I didn't even know how deep it went yet. I woke up before the alarm that Saturday morning. It was still dark, and the room felt colder than usual. Even with Sandra sleeping right beside me, her body curled toward the edge of the bed. Her breathing was slow and even, the picture of peace. But my mind was anything but. The image of her in that man's arms played in a constant loop. It wasn't just the physical closeness that haunted me. It was the comfort. The way her body naturally fit into his. The soft smile she wore. That moment had spoken volumes. Not a mistake. Not a one-time slip. It felt like a preview of a bigger story I hadn't been allowed to read yet. I stared at the ceiling, the shadows from the blinds slicing through the room like prison bars. My thoughts drifted back through the last few months, picking apart everything I'd once shrugged off. And as I lay there, something terrifying started to happen. Things began to connect. I thought about the night, 3 weeks ago, when she said she was staying at Mel's house after a late birthday dinner. She texted me a blurry photo of a wine bottle and a foot on a couch. I didn't ask questions. I trusted her. But the next day, Mel had called asking if Sandra could help with something that weekend. "Haven't seen her in a while," she'd said. At the time, I told myself Mel must have forgotten. I thought about the new clothes. Sandra's always been stylish, but she had a very defined comfort zone. Flowy blouses, jeans, sneakers. But recently, things shifted. Dresses that hugged tighter. Heels. Lipstick that left a mark on my coffee mug. She started wearing red. A color she once said made her feel like she was trying too hard. Now, it seemed to be the only color she owned. "Trying to feel good again," she had said when I teased her gently about the change. It's been a long winter, but it hadn't just been the clothes. She stopped asking for rides. Sandra used to have this endearing quirk. She hated driving in the city. Always said parking garages stressed her out. I'd drop her off for work functions, even casual dinners. But lately, suddenly she was fine driving herself. Claimed she needed the independence. Said her coworkers teased her for always showing up with her husband. And then there was the laptop. She used to leave it open on the kitchen island. She'd work on the couch beside me, responding to emails with a glass of wine in hand. But these days, it rarely left her home office. The screen auto-locked after a few seconds. When I asked why, she joked about company compliance, like that made sense in the context of our marriage. Even her phone had changed. Sandra had never been guarded about it. She'd leave it face up on the nightstand, and I'd tease her about the 230 unread notifications. But now it was always face down, always on silent. She started carrying it from room to room, even to the laundry room, even to the bathroom. I remember the first time I noticed. We were watching a movie, and her phone lit up with a message. I didn't try to read it, but I saw her glance at it, then casually flip the phone over without reacting. No smile, no frown, just control, like she was used to hiding things in plain sight. I hadn't wanted to be that guy, the paranoid husband, the one who reads too much into everything and drives himself crazy over nothing. But after what I saw at the event, I couldn't pretend anymore. My gut had been whispering for weeks. That morning, it finally started screaming. I got up quietly, careful not to wake her. I made coffee like I always did, but everything felt different. I stood in the kitchen staring at the steam rising from the mug, my mind churning like a storm. Was I really doing this? Was I really doubting her like this? Then I caught a whiff of something that made my stomach lurch. Cologne. It wasn't mine. I wear the same brand I've had since college, something clean and woodsy that Sandra helped me pick out years ago. The smell was sharper. Spicier. It lingered faintly on her coat, which was draped over the chair at the dining table. I leaned in just to be sure. It was there. Subtle. But there. That's when it hit me. I wasn't piecing together random suspicions. I was uncovering a pattern. A trail. A trail I hadn't wanted to see before. Later that morning, she finally emerged from the bedroom. Hair wrapped in a towel, face flushed from the shower. She kissed me on the cheek and said good morning like nothing was wrong. Sleep okay? She asked, stretching. I nodded, sipping my coffee. You. Like a rock, she said, smiling. I studied her face. She looked rested. Calm. Comfortable. It was like she didn't even remember last night. Or maybe she was just that good at pretending. Got much planned today? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Errands. Might stop by the art fair near Main Street. Rachel might meet me there. I nodded again. You two haven't hung out in a while, right? She hesitated. Yeah. We've been meaning to. I didn't say anything. Just kept stirring my coffee. My hands were cold despite the mug's heat. She disappeared into the bedroom again, leaving me alone with my thoughts. And for the first time, I allowed myself to entertain a question I'd been avoiding. What if she's in love with someone else? Not just physically cheating. Not just slipping up. But emotionally gone. Building something with someone while still sleeping in my bed, using my last name, kissing me goodbye. And if that was true, if this wasn't just a one-time lapse, what did that mean for everything we'd built? 10 years of shared birthdays and inside jokes and Sunday morning routines. 10 years of trust. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time that morning, turning it all over in my head. The weight of it felt like a boulder on my chest. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't even hurt. I was stunned. Hollowed out. And then I started thinking, what else had I missed? There had been a time not long ago when Sandra would call me during the day just to tell me something funny from her office. I hadn't realized those calls had stopped. The check-in texts too. The thinking about you notes had disappeared. When had we become two people just cohabiting? When had I stopped being the one she told things to? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through her texts. For the past month, nearly every conversation was transactional. Groceries. Bills. Scheduling. No warmth. No spark. Just logistics. That was when the fear turned into resolve. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. This wasn't just a rough patch. Something was going on. And if she wasn't going to tell me the truth, I was going to find it myself. By Sunday night, I knew I couldn't live in uncertainty anymore. I'd been replaying every strange moment, every little red flag, until my brain felt raw. There's only so much second-guessing a person can do before it becomes a form of torture. And I was tired of torturing myself. I needed answers. So that night, while Sandra was in the shower, I went into her office. It felt wrong, violating even, but at this point, her secrecy had left me no choice. Her laptop was there on the desk, plugged in and asleep. I tapped the spacebar. The screen lit up. A password prompt blinked at me. I tried her birthday. No luck. Our anniversary. Still nothing. I stared at the keyboard, suddenly aware of how little I actually knew about her anymore. I used to know everything, her passwords, her routines, even the way she liked her toast. Now I didn't even know the code to the digital world she lived in for hours each day. Then I remembered her gym pass. A 4-digit code she once told me she used for everything she didn't care about. I typed it in. The screen opened. Guilt punched me in the chest, but I kept going. I knew what I was doing was a betrayal of trust. But what she was doing, that was betrayal too. I wasn't snooping for no reason. I was chasing the truth that had been deliberately hidden from me. Her email was open. Nothing jumped out at first. A mix of promotional garbage, work threads, and automated updates from apps. But in the drafts folder, there was a single unsent message. My heart skipped as I clicked it. It was addressed to an email I didn't recognize, just a first name and a string of numbers. But the subject line stopped me cold. Weekend in Grandview. Grandview was a quiet little town about 2 hours away. Sandra and I had never been there together, but I knew she'd mentioned it once in passing as a perfect weekend spot. Nothing flashy, just cozy bed and breakfasts and wine tastings. I opened the draft and read, "Hey you. Last weekend was perfect. I still can't believe I let you talk me into that little cabin, but I'm so glad I did. I keep thinking about the fireplace and the walk through that little antique shop. I haven't felt that kind of peace in a long time. Let me know if the last weekend of this month works. You said you'd check your schedule, and I'll tell Trevor I'm doing a girls' weekend or something. I know it's risky. I know this is complicated, but I can't help what I feel. I didn't mean to fall for a married man. I didn't plan any of this. But I don't want to give it up either. I read it twice. Then a third time. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Not just an affair. Not just physical. This was emotional. This was long-term. This was Sandra carving out a second life, and I wasn't part of it. And she hadn't even sent the email. Maybe she was second-guessing herself. Or maybe it was for safekeeping. A love letter she wanted to keep on hand. My hands were shaking as I exited out. I opened her browser history next. Hotel websites. Cabin rentals. A reservation confirmation for a spa retreat in Grandview dated 3 weeks back, the same weekend she said she was with Rachel. I couldn't breathe. I sat there, staring at the screen, trying to understand how this had all been happening right under my nose. How had she made so many excuses, told so many stories, and looked me in the eye through all of it? I closed the laptop quietly and walked out just as I heard the water stop in the bathroom. The next day, I took it a step further. If she was going to continue treating me like a fool, I'd stop being one. I pulled out the old doorbell camera system we used to have synced to my phone but hadn't used in months. After Sandra's previous complaints about it being too invasive, I disconnected the app from my device. She said it made her feel surveilled even though it was our own front door. But now? I didn't care how she felt. I reinstalled the app, updated the firmware, and connected it to a secure cloud backup. That Thursday, I told Sandra I'd be out late for work. I wasn't. I stayed parked 2 streets over in my car with the windows down, staring at the night sky and wondering if I was truly prepared for what I might discover. At exactly 7:13 p.m., I got the alert. Motion detected at the front door. My breath caught as I opened the feed. There he was. Tall, dark hair. Athletic build. Same blazer, dark navy. A duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He approached the door like he'd been there before. No hesitation. He didn't ring the bell. He punched in a code. The keypad light blinked green. The door opened. And then he was inside. I sat in silence, stunned. Not just because of what I saw, but because of how easily he moved through my world. Confident. Comfortable. As if my house was just another extension of his. He didn't leave until 11:52 p.m. I watched him exit. He adjusted his bag, checked his phone, and walked off into the night like nothing was wrong. Like he hadn't just trespassed through everything I'd ever built. I didn't go in that night. I waited. I drove around until almost 2 a.m. unsure of what to say or do or even feel. The next morning I reviewed the footage again. Frame by frame. Then I saved it. I uploaded it to a private drive and emailed it to myself under a different alias. I created backups. I wasn't just reacting, I was preparing. That night, I went back into her laptop. There was another draft. Same recipient. This one was shorter, but worse. I've never felt this kind of connection before. It scares me how natural it feels. I think about you even when he's sitting right beside me. I wish things were different. But I also don't want to stop. Tell me if you feel it too. He did feel it. I knew that already. There was no ambiguity left. No hope that this was just a flirtation gone too far. This was a relationship. A full, real, messy, secret relationship that had existed in the shadows of my marriage. And I'd been nothing but background noise. After I watched the man walk out of my house like it was his, I knew something fundamental had changed in me. Some inner threshold had been crossed. I wasn't pacing anymore, wasn't spiraling or guessing or hoping I was wrong. That part of me, the trusting, optimistic part, was gone. What replaced it was colder. Sharper. Focused. I didn't confront Sandra that night. I didn't even ask questions. She came out of the bathroom in her robe, humming to herself as if nothing had happened. Her hair was slightly damp. Her skin glowed. I wondered if she'd showered after he left. Was she trying to wash him off? Or was it habit? She smiled at me. You're up late. Couldn't sleep, I said flatly. She walked over and kissed my forehead before heading into the bedroom. I'll leave a melatonin on your nightstand. Thoughtful. Sweet. Deceptive. I stared at the tiny white pill she left behind like it was a joke. It was an offering. A peace token from a woman who had no idea I'd watched her lover punch in the code to our front door an hour before. The next day, I made copies. I went to work as usual, kept my voice level, made the same dumb jokes in the break room. But during lunch, I visited a copy shop across town and printed the screensh *TS. The email drafts, the camera footage timestamps. I organized it all into a neat manila folder, labeled with her initials and the date. Then I took the folder straight to my attorney. Yes, I already had one. A friend of mine, Eli, had recommended him back when I first told him something felt off. He'd said, "Better to have a plan you don't use than wish you had one too late." He was right. The lawyer took one look at the footage and said, "You've got more than enough. If you ever want to proceed, we'll make sure this doesn't turn into a circus." "Good," I said. "This isn't about revenge. It's about being ready." I wasn't just protecting myself from Sandra anymore. I was protecting myself from the man she brought into my life. This ghost with a navy blazer and a confident walk, slipping through the seams of my marriage like smoke. I called a locksmith that same day and had the keypad code changed. When Sandra got home, she was irritated that her code no longer worked. I acted confused. "Maybe it reset during the last storm," I said. "I'll check the system." "Annoying," she muttered, tossing her bag on the kitchen counter. I had to use the spare key. She didn't question it further. She didn't ask me to add her code back. Maybe part of her felt guilty. Or maybe she thought the change was a sign of something bigger, and she didn't want to poke it too hard. That night, I opened her phone. It wasn't hard. She'd grown lazy again. Maybe she thought I'd stopped suspecting. Maybe she thought I never had. The phone unlocked with her face while she was sleeping. Her breathing was slow and even. I held the screen up just enough to read it, thumb hovering over messages she'd recently deleted. I wasn't expecting to find anything major. She'd gotten good at covering tracks. But there it was, tucked between a spam text and an ad for skincare. "Unknown number. He's going to find out soon. You should come clean before someone else does it for you." No name, no context. But it didn't take a genius to read between the lines. Someone else knew. Maybe it was a friend, a colleague, maybe even a family member who'd seen something. Whoever it was, they weren't on her side anymore. Sandra hadn't replied. That told me everything. The next 2 days were a blur of quiet preparation. I backed up the camera footage again and uploaded everything to a second cloud account. I stored the hard copies of evidence in a lockbox at a friend's office downtown. I even sent an encrypted copy to my brother, just in case something happened and I needed someone else to have access. Paranoia? Maybe. But once you've seen your wife plan secret weekends with another man while deleting messages from anonymous numbers, it's hard to feel too cautious. Then it happened. I got a call from the school board. I'm a high school history teacher. Been there for 10 years. Clean record, solid reviews, no drama. But this call came from the superintendent's assistant, asking if I could come in and clarify a few things. I asked what kind of things. She paused. "There's been an anonymous report submitted. We're obligated to follow up. We're not accusing you of anything. We just want to get ahead of it." I sat there in my car, gripping the steering wheel. "What kind of report?" She sighed. "Allegations of inappropriate communication with a student. But again, it's anonymous and vague. We're not treating it as credible at this stage." Felt like a punch in the gut. I don't even teach freshmen. My curriculum's AP heavy. I don't have one-on-one time with students outside of tutoring blocks. And even then, the doors are always open. But it didn't matter. The damage had already started. I hung up and stared at the dashboard, my pulse thudding in my ears. Someone was trying to burn my life down from a distance. And I had a sick feeling I knew exactly who. I walked into the house that night with a smile. Sandra was chopping vegetables at the counter, wine glass half full beside her. She wore one of those loose sweaters she always claimed was her cozy outfit. She looked up and smiled like nothing was off. "Hey babe," she said. "Dinner'll be ready in 20. I kissed her on the forehead. "Smells great." It was a performance. Both of us pretending like we weren't dancing on the edge of a blade. Later that night, I sat on the porch while she cleaned up. The sky was dark, scattered with stars. I stared out into the yard and thought about the message from the unknown number. The school board call. The camera footage. The manila folder sitting in a locked drawer at my attorney's office. This wasn't just infidelity anymore. This was sabotage. Someone, either Sandra or the man she'd fallen for, was trying to get ahead of me. Smear my name. Damage my job. Maybe they thought it would scare me off. Maybe it was retaliation. Or maybe it was a warning, don't come closer. Don't start digging. But it was too late. They had already kicked the hornet's nest. And now I was wide awake. The following Monday I stayed home from work. The school board meeting had gone fine, technically. No accusations stuck. No student complaints. Just vague whispers from a coward hiding behind anonymity. But the damage had still been done. A few of the office staff gave me side glances when I walked through the hallway. One of the assistant principals offered a tight-lipped hang in there that sounded more like a funeral send-off than encouragement. I wasn't suspended, but I was rattled. I spent the weekend reviewing policies, checking email records, looking for anything they could twist into a we*p*n. There was nothing. Still, I didn't feel safe going in that day. So I stayed home. I sat by the front window, coffee in hand, watching the street for anything unusual. I even left the front door open so I could hear every car that rolled past. Around noon, someone knocked. I froze. It wasn't Sandra, she was at work. I wasn't expecting packages and none of my friends knew I'd stayed home. I peeked through the sidelight. It was a woman. Tall, maybe late 30s. Business casual clothes. She wore no makeup, or at least not enough to hide the stress on her face. Her hair was pulled into a tight ponytail, but a few strands had escaped and clung to her temple like she'd been sweating or pacing or both. She didn't look angry. She looked tired. I opened the door cautiously. "Trevor?" she asked, voice soft but direct. "Yes. I'm Lila." She hesitated. I think we need to talk." She didn't wait for an invitation. She just stepped forward, holding out her phone like it was a badge. On the screen was a photo from the charity event, one I hadn't taken but instantly recognized. It was Sandra, caught mid-embrace. The man in the navy blazer, her man, was clearer this time. "I believe that's your wife," Lila said. I stepped aside without a word and let her in. She sat at the kitchen table without asking. Her movements were mechanical, like she'd played this scene out a dozen times in her head and was just hitting the marks now. I closed the door, followed her in, and sat across from her. She didn't waste time. "I'm married to him," she said. "His name's Drew. We've been together 12 years, married for 7. No kids, just 2 cats and a mortgage I never wanted." I said nothing. I just stared at the photo on her phone. "I knew something was wrong months ago," she continued. "He started traveling more. Business conferences. Always last minute. And he got weird with his phone, turning it face down, taking it into the bathroom, setting up that stupid fingerprint lock he never used before." I nodded slowly. "Same story here. He used to joke about cheaters," she added. "He had this thing where he'd say people only cheat when they think they can get away with it. Like it was some kind of math equation." I laughed under my breath. Bitterly. "Guess he solved it." She pulled a folder from her tote bag and slid it across the table. "Receipts. *TS. Hotel confirmations. Credit card statements." And then the bombshell, handwritten notes from Sandra. Not emails. Not texts. Notes. Little pieces of torn stationery, all in Sandra's looping script. Some signed with an S. Others folded into squares. Love notes like a teenager might pass in class. One of them read, "I hate that we have to sneak, but I love that it's with you. You make me feel like I haven't been asleep for the past 10 years. I felt sick. Lila looked at me and said, "I've been gathering all this for weeks. But I didn't know who you were. Not until I saw that photo from the event posted in a public gallery. Someone tagged it with your school's name. That's how you found me?" I asked. She nodded. "I Googled your staff page. Recognized Sandra from another photo. It wasn't hard after that." I leaned back in my chair, exhaling. "You're the first person in this entire mess who's told me the truth." She gave a sad smile. "We're the collateral damage. No one tells people like us anything." I picked up the receipts and flipped through them. One of them caught my eye, a meal for 2 at a steakhouse downtown listed under a school committee account. I frowned. "That's not her money," I said. "That's part of the fundraising budget. She handles those accounts." Lila met my eyes. "I found more. Hotel bookings charged to an organization card. Dinners too." I thought it was weird, so I started digging. Turns out they've been using school and nonprofit accounts like personal wallets. That was a whole new level of betrayal. It wasn't just personal now. It was criminal. Lila stood. "I'm not telling you what to do, but I've already reported it. Not officially, just to a few parents. And one of the sponsors. People are pissed. There's going to be noise." I nodded. "Good. Let there be noise." She looked at me for a long moment. "You okay?" "No," I said. "But I will be." She paused at the door before leaving. "If you ever want to compare notes or burn their world down, you have my number." And then she was gone. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, folder in hand, staring at the wreckage of what I used to call a marriage. This woman, this stranger, had shown me more truth in one conversation than Sandra had in the last 6 months. The part that hurt most wasn't just the cheating. It was how much of her I didn't recognize anymore. It didn't take long. Just one night, Lila sent the evidence to a parent group chat tied to the school's fundraiser committee. She also dropped the documents anonymously in a staff forum that Sandra herself had once moderated. It spread faster than I expected. By morning, the messages were flying. Screensh *TS. Receipts. Photos from Grandview. Someone added, "Is this why the art program's budget got slashed?" Another, "Wait, this is Sandra? Wasn't she in charge of the literacy grant?" By 10 a.m., Sandra had been removed from her leadership role. By noon, 2 sponsors had publicly withdrawn their support. Local gossip blogs picked up the story. I stayed quiet. I didn't leak anything. I didn't comment. I didn't have to. The truth had a life of its own now. Sandra came home that night shaken, pale. Her phone buzzed constantly, but she barely looked at it. "They're twisting everything," she muttered. I said nothing. They don't understand the full story. Still, nothing. Finally, she turned to me. "Did you do this?" I met her eyes. "No. I just stopped protecting you." She didn't speak after that. She wandered to the bedroom, shut the door, and didn't come out again that night.